Have you noticed how increasingly distracted we are these days? You pick up your phone to check a notification, and before you know it, 30 minutes have passed scrolling through your feed. You sit down to study, and your mind wanders to 1,000 different places. You open your laptop to work and end up watching random videos on YouTube. If this happens to you, doesn't mean you have ADHD or any other problem. In fact, it's more normal than you might think. Today, we live in a world so full of stimuli that it's difficult to focus on a single task. There's always a notification, a video, a song, a news item stealing our attention. Our focus disappears like water leaking from a bucket. However, the habit of scanning multiple things at once wasn't always a bad thing. Our ancestors needed to constantly scan their environment for dangers. This fragmented attention kept us alive. But today? Today, it's destroying us from the inside. According to researchers at the University of California, it takes a person an average of 23 minutes to regain full focus after a single interruption. Now multiply that by the number of times you break your attention by checking your phone, switching tasks, or anything else. But what if there was a way to hack that? To train your brain to ignore distractions and immerse itself so deeply in a task that the world around you simply disappears. This technique exists, and it's not some innovative method created by a digital marketing coach. This technique comes from the Zen monasteries of Japan, and its name is Ichigo Ichi. Samaya, the concept of doing one thing at a time with complete attention. Chapter 1. The Story of Jake. Morrison was 16 years old when he realized he was losing the race of life. He wasn't a bad student, far from it. He understood math, physics, and programming. The problem was that Jake couldn't concentrate. He'd sit down to study, and minutes later, he'd already be checking Instagram. He'd open his calculus book and start daydreaming about working at Google. He'd watch a video lesson and pause halfway through to check a game score. Jake had a dream, one of those big, scary, almost impossible dreams. He wanted to get into MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the most competitive universities on the planet. But Jake had a problem. His grades weren't even close to what was needed, while other students consistently got high marks. Jake lived in the middle ground, A, C here, A, B there. Enough to pass, but not enough to dream of my. His friends loved making jokes. Jake, dude, you want to study software engineering at MIT, and you can't even get a B in math. You're going to end up flipping burgers at McDonald's. They laughed. They thought it was funny. But Jake felt every word like a punch to the gut. His parents pressured him to, not maliciously, but out of concern. Jake, you have potential, but you need to stop getting distracted. Jake knew this. He knew he had potential. The problem was he couldn't access it because whenever he sat down to study, his mind sabotaged him. He spent hours daydreaming about his graduation from MIT, his first programming job, his friends apologizing for doubting him. But meanwhile, the math book remained closed. The physics assignment remained blank. And the dream remained distant. Until one day, after getting yet another low grade on a calculus test, Jake had a breakdown. He was tired of being mediocre, tired of disappointing his parents, tired of hearing his friends' jokes. But instead of giving up, Jake did something different. He decided to ask for help. Chapter 2. The meeting with the teacher the next day. Jake went to see Mr. Tanaka, the school's math teacher. A man of Japanese origin in his 50s, always calm, always centered. He had the kind of presence that conveyed peace. Jake knocked on the door. "Mr. Tanaka, may I speak with you for a minute?" The professor looked up and gestured for Jake to come in. "Sure, Jake, sit down." "What happened?" Jake took a deep breath. "Sir, I don't know what to do. I really want to improve my grades. I want to be a software engineer, but I can't focus. I sit down to study, and my mind keeps jumping from one place to another. I'm distracted all the time." Mr. Tanaka was silent for a few seconds. Then he smiled not with pity, but with recognition. "Jake, can I ask you a question? When you sit down to study, how many tabs do you leave open on your computer?" Jake thought for a second. "I don't know. Maybe 10. "And your cell phone? Where do you keep it?" "On the side, with notifications turned on." "And do you usually study while thinking about other things at the same time?" Jake blinked. "How do you know?" Mr. Tanaka smiled. "Because I was exactly like that when I was your age. I grew up in Japan, and when I was young, I also had trouble concentrating until my grandfather taught me something that completely changed my life." Jake leaned forward, intrigued. "What was it?" The teacher wrote something on a piece of paper and handed it to Jake. "Ichigo ichi zamai." Jake looked at the paper, confused. "ICHIGO ... What?" "Ichigo ichi zamai. It's a concept from Zen Buddhism. It literally means concentration on a single action. It's the practice of doing one thing at a time with total attention as if you and the action were one." Jake frowned. "Like, just focusing on one thing." "It's not just about focusing, Jake. It's about becoming the thing you're doing. When you're studying math, you're not Jake studying math. You are math. There's no separation. You immerse yourself completely." Jake still seemed confused. Mr. Tanaka continued. "Have you ever started a video game and then realized 3 hours had passed?" "Yes, that always happens." "So you entered a state of flow. You were so immersed that you lost track of time." Ichigo ichi zamai is learning to intentionally enter this state in any activity. Jake felt a chill down his spine. That made sense. "And does it work? Scientifically?" Mr. Tanaka smiled. "Yes, today. Neuroscience calls this mindfulness or flow state. There are dozens of studies showing that when you practice focused attention, you change the structure of your brain. It increases the density of the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for controlling attention." He opened a drawer and took out some printed articles. "Look, I have some materials here. Articles that combine Ichigo ichi zamai with behavioral neuroscience techniques. Take them home, study them, apply them, and tell me what happens." Jake picked up the papers, his hands trembling. Something inside him told him that this would change everything. "Thank you, Mr. Tanaka. Seriously, thank you very much." The teacher placed his hand on Jake's shoulder. "Jake, you have what it takes. You just need to learn how to focus your attention. And when you learn that, nothing will stop you." Chapter 3. Applying Ichigo ichi zamai at night. Jake didn't sleep much. He stayed up, reading the articles Mr. Tanaka had given him. And the more he read, more everything made sense. One article explained how our brain works, how with every distraction, every notification, every task change, our brain needs to expend energy to reset and refocus. The more you do this, the more you train your brain to be distracted. Another article explained the Pomodoro technique combined with Ichigo ichi zamai, blocks of focused concentration followed by conscious pauses. No picking up your phone during breaks. No checking social media. Just breathing, stretching, drinking water, being present. Another discussed choice. Architecture, modifying your environment to make distractions impossible. Cell phone in another room, notifications off, only one tab open. One task at a time. Jake discovered that Ichigo ichi zamai is about completely immersing yourself in the activity you're doing now without dividing your mind. When you're sweeping the floor, you are the act of sweeping. When you're eating, you are the act of eating. There's a famous Zen saying, "When I eat, I eat. When I sleep, I sleep." It seems obvious, but how many times do we eat while thinking about work or go to sleep dwelling on problems? Our modern culture values doing 1,000 things at once. Ichigo ichi zamai is the radical opposite. When you fragment your attention, you're not truly present in any activity. You become superficial in everything. When distraction arises, will the practitioner simply acknowledges, "My mind wandered," and gently returns to the current activity. No guilt, no frustration. It's a constant practice of bringing the mind back. Jake realized something important. He wasn't weak or lazy. He had just never learned how to use his attention correctly. And then he decided from that day on, everything would change. The following Monday, Jake came home from school and did something he had never done before. He created a ritual, put his cell phone in a drawer in another room, turned off all computer notifications, closed all browser tabs, leaving only one open. Set a 25-minute time, took 3 deep breaths. Then he began. The first 5 minutes were awful. His mind screamed, "Check your phone. See if anyone texted you. Open YouTube." But Jake remembered what he had read. When distraction arises, you don't fight it. You simply observe. "Ah, my mind wants to wander," and gently bring your attention back. He did that about 10 times in the first 25 minutes. However, in the second block, distractions decreased. In the third, he entered a state of concentration he had never experienced before. When the timer rang, Jake looked at the clock and couldn't believe it. 75 minutes had passed, and he had made more progress in 1 hour than he normally did in an entire week. He felt a surge of energy, of power. For the first time in a long time, he felt he was in control. In the following days, Jake maintained the ritual. Every day, the same process. And he went even further. He applied Ichigo Ichizamai to everything. When he ate, he focused on eating, no watching videos when he talked to someone. He was totally present when he walked to school. He paid attention to the sounds, colors, movement. He realized he'd lived his whole life on autopilot. And now he was awake. His friends noticed the change. "Jake, man, you don't hang out with us anymore. Is everything all right?" Jake smiled. "Everything is great. I'm just focused on something bigger right now." They didn't understand, but Jake didn't care. For the first time, he was building the future he wanted instead of just dreaming about it. Then came the first math test after this transformation. Jake sat down, looked at the questions, and entered the state. Ichigo Ichizamai. He wasn't Jake taking a test. He was mathematics solving itself through him. When the professor returned the tests the following week, Jake looked at the paper and froze. He had gotten an A. He had never received such a high grade in his life. Mr. Tanaka looked at him from across the room and smiled. Jake understood. This was just the beginning. Chapter 4. The climb from high school to MIT. The following months were transformative. Jake continued practicing Ichigo Ichizamai every day. His grades started rising consistently. A in physics, A in chemistry, A in programming. His parents were in shock. "Jake, what happened to you?" "I just learned how to focus, Mom." But that wasn't all. Jake had learned something much deeper. Discipline isn't about willpower. It's about systems. It's about creating an environment and routine that make it impossible to fail. Distraction is not the enemy. Distraction is just a sign that your mind is tired, bored, or afraid. When you understand that, you stop fighting and start working with your brain, not against it. At the end of the year, Jake applied to MIT. His friends still mocked him. "Dude, MIT. That's crazy. Do you know how many brilliant people get rejected every year?" Jake just smiled. "No. But I also know I'll do my best, and the rest is out of my control." He applied the same philosophy to test preparation, SATs, essays, programming projects, everything in its own time, with complete attention. Then, 6 months later, on an ordinary afternoon, Jake received an email. "Congratulations. You have been admitted to MIT. He read the sentence 3 times before believing it. Then he screamed so loudly that his parents came running into the room. Passed. I got into MIT. His mother started to cry. His father hugged him tightly, and Jake felt deep gratitude not only for the acceptance, but for having learned something that went beyond any college. He had learned to master his attention. And whoever masters their attention masters their life. Chapter 5. Beyond. The journey continues. Getting into MIT was incredible. But Jake soon realized something. Being there wasn't enough. The level of demand, the amount of work, the competition, it was another universe. But Jake had an advantage. While other students struggled with distractions, procrastination, and anxiety, Jake had Ichigo Ichizamai. He maintained the ritual, clean environment. Phone away, 3 deep breaths, total immersion. The teacher started to notice. Jake, your attention to detail is impressive. You don't miss a thing. Jake understood something fundamental. Talent is important, but attention is power. During his 4 years of college, Jake wasn't the most brilliant student, but he was one of the most consistent, and consistency, in the long run, beats disorganized genius. He graduated with honors, and soon landed a job as a junior programmer at a tech company. Jake could have relaxed. He could have thought, I did it. Now I can slow down. But he didn't, because he had learned something essential. Everything is a process. There is no finish line. There is only the next step, so he applied Ichigo Ichizamai to his work. Every line of code written with complete attention, every meeting. 100% present, every project, deeply immersed within 2 years. Jake was promoted to full-stack programmer. 3 years later, senior programmer at 28. He became a team leader. His colleagues kept asking, Jake, what's your secret? How are you so consistent? And Jake always answered the same thing. I'm not smarter than you. I've just learned to eliminate distractions and be present. One thing at a time, total attention. Chapter 6. The science behind it, asterisk, but hold on. You might be thinking, okay, good story. But does it really work? Or is it just motivational talk? Let's get to the facts. According to a study published by neuroscientists at Harvard University, the regular practice of mindfulness, which is exactly what Ichigo Ichizamai proposes, increases the density of gray matter in the prefrontal cortex. This means your brain literally changes structure. The region responsible for planning, impulse control, and focus becomes stronger. Asterisk. Another study at Stanford University showed that people who practice focused attention have up to a 40% reduction in the activation of the brain's default mode network, the network that remains active when your mind wanders. When you're thinking about the past or future, when you get distracted, asterisk, in other words, the practice of Ichigo Ichizamai literally shuts down the distraction center of your brain. Asterisk A. Leading neuroscientist specializing in neuroplasticity stated, asterisk, the human brain is incredibly adaptable. When you consistently train your attention, you're not just improving a skill, you're rewiring neural circuits. You're creating information superhighways, where before there were only trails. Asterisk, in other words, every time you bring your attention back when it wanders, you are literally building a stronger brain. Asterisk, and look, this isn't mysticism. It's pure neuroscience. Asterisk, the Pomodoro technique combined with Ichigo Ichizamai has been used by programmers, writers, entrepreneurs. Why? Because it works. Asterisk, when you remove distractions from your environment, work in focused time blocks, and bring your attention back every time it wanders, you're doing the equivalent of a workout for your brain. Just as muscles grow when you lift weights, your attention grows when you train it. Asterisk, but here's the craziest thing about Ichigo Ichizamai. Asterisk, it's not just about productivity. It's not just about doing more in less time. Asterisk, it's about truly living. Think about it. How many times have you eaten an entire meal without remembering the taste? Asterisk, how many times have you watched a movie while checking your phone? Asterisk, how many conversations have you had with people you love, but your mind was elsewhere? Asterisk, we're living on autopilot. We're letting life pass us by while we're distracted. Asterisk, and ichigo, ichizamai. It wakes you up, asterisk, when you learn to be fully present. You don't just work better. Food tastes better. Conversations have more depth. Experiences become richer. It's almost like stepping out of the matrix and seeing the real world for the first time. Asterisk, studies show that people who practice mindfulness report much higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction. Why? Asterisk, because happiness doesn't come from simply having more things. It comes from being present in what you already have. Asterisk, Jake learned this, and it changed everything. Asterisk, epilogue. Where is Jake today? Asterisk, Jake still works at the same company. He's still a team leader. But more importantly, he's a completely different person from that 16-year-old boy who couldn't concentrate for 5 minutes. Asterisk, Jake teaches ichigo ichizamai to his team members. He sees the same results happening. Asterisk, people who were previously average now deliver. Exceptional work, people who lived under stress now have mental clarity, and look, Jake isn't special. He didn't have an absurdly high IQ. He didn't come from a wealthy family. He didn't have connections. Asterisk, he only learned one thing that most people never learn: how to direct his attention. And this is the truth no one tells you. Success doesn't come from having more time, it comes from using the time you have better. Asterisk. It's not about having more resources. It's about focusing on the resources you already have. Asterisk. It's not about being smarter. It's about being more present. Asterisk, because ultimately, your life is made up of moments. And if you're not present in your moments, you're not living your life. You're just watching it pass by. Asterisk, if this video resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future content. I also invite you to watch the other videos. Their content might help you too. Asterisk, and remember, one thing at a time. Full attention. That's how you change the game. Asterisk, be present. Walk with honor. Follow the path. Asterisk, see you in the next video.